So I think I've pretty well locked myself into the Bionicle niche. So I got to find ways to sneak other topics into videos, but this is a Bionicle video at the end of the day, and I wanted to focus on one piece very specifically, though I have a bin in front of me, because this is a piece that sort of goes out of its way to be unique in a way that I really have not seen from a lot of other pieces from Bionicle and from Lego, of course. And it's not a piece that I've ever seen used on a Moc. That's not to say that it hasn't been. I don't know every Moc that is out there. Specifically, it is this piece, introduced in 2004 for Lego's system themes. Various themes used this, and it thankfully comes in dark bluish gray as seen here, as well as white, so you do in fact get a white color for this skull piece, and that's very clearly what this is. It does have some interesting connections, these bar holes through the eyes that also have studs as well, so you can utilize both different connections, Baraki eyes, studs, bricks, whatever you can fit down in there, but also a bar connection in the nose, which is not immediately obvious. It also has anti-studs at the base here, but notably on the back side, and this is what interests me the most. This double pin connection, 3 modules apart. I find this one fascinating because this is otherwise very clearly a system piece. In fact, removing that completely honestly wouldn't do a lot to change the design of this piece at all. So I'm kind of surprised this is how they went with this connection instead of maybe anti-studs on the back of it, or even studs sticking out. You know, it could have worked. So it's a really cool piece, but it makes me think to myself, well, what can it be used for? You know, it has these pins to connect to other items. And so I thought, well, an immediate, obvious observation to me is the Anika torso, right? I think of this and I immediately think of, oh, okay, like the Punisher emblem or something like that. Obviously, it's very different from that, but it's a skull. At the end of the day, it does come in that white color as well. So I think you could make your own play on a character in the Bionicle form factor. You can use it on other pieces as well. You can combine it, of course, with the Makuta, our chest piece, torso piece in the same way, although it has to attach to the back side because there's not really enough room on the front for this connection. But it's still kind of interesting at the very least. And it's such a goofy piece. But it's not the only piece that Lego has designed with these types of connections. I just think it's the most special. Because it has bar connections, you could arguably use it with CCBS builds, the anti-studs meaning you could of course use it with Lego builds as well, and the pins meaning it could even be used with Technic. It's a very versatile piece, but it's weird enough in its shaping that I don't think it does a great job in any of these scenarios. So it's a strange piece. And Lego has done pieces like this in the past, very specialized pieces. This panel is another one that comes to mind, which is another really cool one. This color here is a relatively rare color generally from Lego for building with. This is very light bluish gray, not to be confused with white. This is the color that's on the Thok Paraka set. And it's a very useful color, but it's also a very limiting color, so it can be fun to build with because of that inherent challenge presented. Still though, the piece itself is just an interesting shape all around, and it can be kind of hard to use because of that. I originally got my first set of these in yellow way back from a old Lego Racers Desert Hopper set, which I am only remembering now, and I'm super nostalgic for that line of racers too. You know, I was a kid, so of course that's what's going to be first and foremost on my mind. But there was a very specific aesthetic that was achieved with these vehicles because of these specialized pieces, like this one here, as well as a sort of a mudguard panel that went over the wheels and a tailpiece that came out with those sets as well. It's a really fascinating era of Lego, but Lego still does stuff like this today. As I mentioned, you know, with the Ninjago dragons that have been coming out for the past 3 or so years, we've been seeing more and more specialized headpieces from each of these different sets, which I love. I do think, though, it's definitely a fine line to walk. So in March, we have a new Ninjago set coming out that is another dragon. It is the Young Ryu dragon, I believe, or Young Dragon Ryu, whatever it's called. Suffice to say, it has a specialized head on it as well. However, this one probably irritates me the most because from what I can see, I think it may only have one connection point on it. At the very least, it might have like some anti-studs on the bottom and an axle hole or something to connect the ball joint to, or a socket, or whatever the case, right? I don't know because I don't have the piece in hand, but I don't see, at least from pictures that we've gotten so far, and probably should have pulled this up for this video, but I did not think about it at the time. That said, did not see connections for a lower jaw of any kind, and in fact did not see a lower jaw in the set at all, which is really unfortunate. Now, I get it with that character specifically because Ryu, how is that pronounced anyway? I'm definitely curious. But is a character that LEGO is trying to make sort of a staple for Ninjago with the new series kind of going on, the new sort of Dragon's Rising sub-theme. And I think that's really smart of LEGO to do. We've seen a lot of different franchises trying to use these sort of like cute animals because, hey, those sell toys, those sell plushies. It gets kids' butts planted in seats for movies and stuff. And so for TV shows, it can do a similar thing. I think that is a very smart way to go, and it is obviously a proven strategy, especially if you're trying to sell toys. What else attracts kids? Cute animals are definitely going to do it. So I don't mind it with that character specifically because I look at it in the same way I look at like a mask for, a Toa set. But I still always like for parts like that to have connections wherever possible. I made a video in the past where I talked about sort of some of my issues with the Toa Mavri masks, specifically from 2007. How a handful of them are made asymmetric for honestly no good reason. Where, in my opinion, LEGO could have done, and I have this sitting aside, so I guess I'll show it off. I have talked about this, like I said, in a previous video, but done something like this, right? This is just a modified Maxelos mask with some other things attached to it to give you kind of the same overall vibe of that mask, right? It's got a tube that plugs into the side here. It's got a little breathing apparatus off to the other side. And it's got a lens or some sort of light for underwater. This is a very simple premise here, but it works, and had LEGO done something like this, it would have meant we got more symmetrical masks, which is fine because typically I will make the argument that symmetrical masks are more usable overall. However, it doesn't mean that no mask could be asymmetric, but I think it was like half of the masks from 2007 were, and so it's just like, it gets to you after a while. And how cool would it have been, again, as I mentioned, to have seen, sprue packs or little accessory packs so you can modify the mask however you want. If you don't want the light off to one side, if you don't want the breathing apparatus, you can change them out for whatever, Anyway, suffice to say, it's always fun to see how LEGO is able to incorporate new designs, specialized designs, in a way that can be utilized well, that has a lot of potential, whether it's hidden potential or not, whether LEGO realizes that there's a connection here or not, whatever the case may be. It's always fun to experiment with those specialized pieces because of the nature of them being specialized. There are people who have done this for decades, who have taken out Bionicle pieces and explored different connections that I would never even have thought of. I love to see it because this is a line that I have been deeply involved with for the majority of my life. And so to see new discoveries like this, to make new discoveries, as I did yesterday in the previous video, there's something really special about that. It's not tangible to me. I don't know how to describe it other than to say, don't let it go away. Just enjoy it. Have fun with it. And just explore. Anyway, before I end the video, the last thing I want to go ahead and say, which is completely unrelated to any of this, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, talking about another subject, I have more interests than just Bionicle, just Lego. I have a plant sitting outside right now because it's like 50 degrees in the winter, which is crazy. And so I'm like, oh yeah, sunlight, go, And it was crazy because I went out yesterday, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but they were doing some like work on our neighbor's house or whatever and left a big mess, whatever. And so I've been left to kind of clean some of that stuff up. And so I was cleaning out the yard yesterday, throwing stuff, and we got this little like wooded area right behind where we live. It's nothing fancy, nothing small, but put some tree branches back there, break them down and whatnot. And so where I live, it's not common to find cactus because I'm not in like a desert or anything like that, but we do have a couple of species of cacti that grow here. And I always found it fascinating because I always used to find them up to the north, down to the south, but never really around me. But when we moved in here, I noticed our neighbor had some, probably some that they had planted or moved from somewhere else around a tree there. And I was like, oh, it'd be super cool if those were some of the actual like native ones that they happen to just have growing in their yard, or maybe that someone brought them there. You could cross your fingers, right? Well, anyway, I was cleaning up, like I said yesterday, and I go to the backyard and throw some of the sticks and stuff back into this little wooded area, kind of break them down and everything. And I notice up against this tree something that looks kind of leathery. And I thought, okay, it's like a pumpkin skin from October, right? But no, I kind of looked closer at it and I was like, it looks off. But then I saw the spines and I knew right away, oh, right, yeah, we have cactus here, of course. But to find it right in my backyard, that's so funny because I do find myself bringing it up a lot. Specifically, it's this little guy right here. Now, that's not what it looks like right now, but that's what it'll look like in the spring and summer. It's got gorgeous flowers, by the way. It's apparently called, I'm going to try and get this name right. It's Eastern prickly pear for what it's worth. And it's Opuntia humifusa, and yes, fusa is a Bionicle word as well, which I think is hilarious. Anyway, but yeah, I saw it back there, and so little things like that always cheer me up. Like I said, I go hiking in the spring, just kind of get myself out of the box that I've been in all winter, and sort of let my mind run wild, let my mind just kind of ease back into things, and it's just good because it feels nice to get out there, to explore, to see new things, and it lets you just kind of, if you're gonna be alone with your thoughts, the best place to do it is out in the wilderness, and so I always go around, and that's one of the reasons I'm into plants the way I am too, because I always see new stuff and I want to know what it is. I'm curious about these things. And so I've always kept my eye out for these plants, but typically where they grow around us is usually like rocky hillsides and stuff like that. And yeah, we live on a little bit of a hill, but it's not like really rocky or anything crazy. So yeah, to have seen it there, my thought is probably, honestly, someone got rid of the ones that were in their yard when we first moved in and just probably threw them back there because that's kind of everybody's little dumping ground for trees and stuff. And it usually works out well enough as long as they're not polluting, hopefully. But my thought is that they probably took out these plants because, yeah, they're spiky and they hurt to step on, and threw them back there, and they just kind of grew because they're cacti and they do that pretty readily. So silly little thing, I know, and I'll keep you updated on it. Maybe I'll pick one and put it in a flower pot or something like that, see if it'll grow inside. I've got one cactus that does pretty good job overall. It's one that kind of likes neglect and actually likes colder temperatures, so it usually goes dormant in the summer, and very pretty either way. But yeah, hopefully we'll be enjoying some of this weather. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on this video, specialized pieces especially, but also I guess if you want to see more plant stuff, that'd be cool. I'd enjoy doing that. As we get closer to these spring and summer months, I do have plans, at least for myself, to go and explore. So if that's something you guys would be interested in going along on that journey, well, there's only one way for me to know. But of course, you can always check out the conversation in the comments or check out the Discord, Instagram, and if you want to support the channel and get the perks, Patreon down in the description below, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.